All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm certainly excited to get things started here. Before we do, we've got people still signing on here, so we'll do some mic and audio check, visual check here real quick. Uh, can I just get someone to in the chat let us know if you can hear us and see the screen? If you look at your chat there. I can see and hear. Awesome. Sweet. All right. Perfect.
Hey Dean, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I've got you loud and clear.
Good deal.
So, yeah, we're about a minute. I'm going to give folks another 15 to 20 seconds. We got a bunch of people signing on right now. So, just bear with. But yeah, Elliot, I hear you loud and clear. So we're good. All right. Let's see here. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get things rolling here. Just I know it's afternoon of probably of a busy day for most of you. So out of respect for everybody's time, we're going to go ahead and just dive right in. So awesome. Hopefully you have joined us today to learn about the easy way to get more positive reviews and what to do about the bad ones. We're excited certainly to have the opportunity to share with you for a few minutes this afternoon. Looking forward to hopefully you walking away from this session with some action items. But in synopsis here, we're going to cover, why your reputation is important. Uh, trying to help you get reviews in an easier fashion. How to get ahead of those bad ones. We're actually going to also unpack a step-by-step review request. How to go about doing that. We're going to cover a simple complaint resolution option, as well as we've got a couple of pretty cool bonus tips that we're going to cover as well. So excited to be with you guys today. A little bit about myself. My name is Dean Calora. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of TitleTap. I actually spent about 10 years in the title business, helping to grow for the attorney I worked for at the time, from one office to 16 offices. So I've really worn all the hats of many of you that are in the audience right now. Was a processor, a closer, business development person. So truly appreciate what you guys go through day in and day out. I also got licensed as a realtor, and I've been active for the past 12 years. I support a small family practice in the Tampa Bay market, so speak realtor and title. And I've been fortunate to be an Alta Hop leader, and very humbled. We've been on the speaking circuit, teaching about best practices, and so it's been a lot of fun. Elliot, you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure, Dean. So unlike Dean, I was more on the technical side of the business. I spent a number of years as an IT consultant for real estate attorneys, title agents, mortgage brokers, mortgage companies, things like that. And over the past several years, have built hundreds of websites and worked with hundreds of agents on how to improve their online presence. And as Dean said, co-founder of TitleTap and also a hop leader.
Yeah, for some of you that don't know what TitleTap is or who we are, just in short, a lot of what we're going to be teaching today, we actually practice every day. We drink our own Kool-Aid with a lot of this stuff, and we are in essence a digital marketing platform for real estate attorneys and title agents, and have been supporting the industry specifically for a little over 7 years now. So, but a lot of what we teach when we get on webinars like this comes from raw practice of doing it every day for agents across the country, including ourselves. So excited to be with you guys. So Elliot, why reviews, man? Why is it important?
Yeah, so before we get into how to get more reviews, it's really important to understand why reviews are so important now. And first things first, some of the things that I hear is, well, we don't get our business from the web, or my business comes from referrals. Um, and that all might be true, but one thing to keep in mind is that referrals are still Googling you, okay? So just remember, keep that in mind as we go through the rest of this presentation. So what happens when you don't have reviews? How do customers feel? How do consumers feel? And this is an interesting chart that came out last year. And if you look at the top three percentages there, it equals 90%. That basically they're either less likely to buy, they put the buying decision on hold, or they have difficulty making that buying decision when you have no reviews, if they're Googling you. And just to drive this home a little bit more with a few more statistics, 84% of consumers trust online reviews as a personal referral. This was a few years ago 80%. So this is trending up, and I think it's going to continue to trend up. Even without a business profile, such as like a Facebook profile or a Google profile, whatever it might be, people can still leave you a bad review. And I'm going to go into details with that in just a couple minutes here. But I just want you to keep it in mind. 68% of consumers form an opinion after reading just a handful of reviews. So, the good news is that you don't need that many reviews. But it's important to have some positive ones to outweigh, anything negative that might happen. And 87% look for at least 3 to 5 stars before they'll even work with you. So with that all being said, do you really know how much business you might be losing if you're not focused on getting some more reviews and kind of building your brand online in that fashion? And my biggest point here is that the times are changing with with reviews and what you should do. So Dean's going to talk about how this relates a little bit to customer service.
Yeah, thanks, Elliot. So, I'm willing to bet if I asked all of you out in the audience right now, how many of you provide the best service? Well, I'm guessing everyone's hand's going to go up, right? All of you do. And the point being, customer service is not a differentiator. It's become an expectation. And I think a lot of you in the audience have started to feel this already. And this is an interesting stat that Salesforce actually published from Forrester. So according to Forrester, we're 5 years into the age of the customer, in which newly empowered customers place elevated expectations on every interaction they have with brands. So we highlighted that centerpiece because it's super important. That you focus on the actual individual interactions, and we'll get to more of that here as we move along. So, for example, you could once say, hey, drink this much Florida orange juice every day because it's good for you, right? This is kind of the latest way of thinking. Well, today, now you have to prove it. And we prove that through social validations. What are others saying about your product or service? Is it true? And they don't want to hear that from you. They want to see some authentic and organic responses in terms of validating that. So what's really interesting here is that reviews have really become a customer service channel, much like email, phone, and face-to-face. With the platforms that are out there now for reviews, it can really service as an extension of service. And now we're going to kind of sort of dig in a little bit deeper. Now that you've got kind of an understanding as to why it's important to focus on reviews, we're going to go ahead and unpack 5 ways to get more positive reviews. So I think, Elliot, you're kicking us off with number 1.
Yeah, so there's probably going to be some hoorays and some boos in the chat with this, but like it or not, it's Tom Brady there, and offense is the best defense. And what I mean by that with your online profiles is that you need to claim them, right? And I alluded to this a little bit earlier, and the misconception that people have is that, well, if I don't claim my business page, my Facebook page, then Dean, if you go to the next slide there. If I don't claim my business page, then I can't get any bad reviews, and that's entirely wrong. That's a big misconception. And here's one example of a auto-generated basically business profile. So if you don't actually create and claim your profile, Google and Facebook and all these services actually aggregate public business data from consumers directly from other profiles and things like that, and they generate their own listings for you. And the bad news about this is that if anyone ever leaves a negative review there or a positive review or anything, you can't really do anything about it. You can't reply to the review. You can't try to make it right. You just can't do anything. Your hands are tied. You have absolutely no access to it. So here's an example of one, and these red arrows just sort of point out a couple things that could go wrong. You can see there in the red box, it's an unofficial page. That's how it's labeled, but it's very subtle. It's really kind of, most people don't even see that. Um, you can see that obviously you can leave reviews right below that. And then up at the top, for instance, there's a button that will supposedly call that business. But how do you know if that phone number is even correct, right? You can't change it. You can't look up and see what it is. You have to just click on it. Maybe that goes to your closer who left you 3 years ago, right? So there's all sorts of things that can go wrong here, and that's why it's really, really important to claim your profile. And the next image here, it just kind of to drive this home a little bit, these are Google searches. One is just a standard Google search for a company's Facebook page. This is a law firm in particular. And you can see all of these are different Facebook pages. Some of them are actual legitimate Facebook pages, and some of them are not. Some of them are auto-generated ones. But it's very hard as the consumer and as a realtor or anything else to figure out the difference. Like, which should I go to, right? There's a bunch of them. And same thing on the other side with Google Places. Again, all of these, some of them have hours, some of them don't. Some of them, maybe it goes to the right website. Some of them, maybe it doesn't. Maybe the address has changed, but you have absolutely no control over that if you don't claim your profiles. So it's better to own it, even if you don't ever want to do any kind of Facebook posting or anything else. At least claim your profiles, at least own your properties there. So that leads us to action step number 1, claim your profiles. And so right here on the screen, these are some of the common ones that we recommend, but if you'd like a more extensive list, you can go to that URL right at the very bottom, jot it down real quick. It's TitleTap.com/mobile-friendly-sites. And this will give you a PDF that has maybe 15 or so that we recommend. But you don't have to bite off the whole thing. Just start with the most important ones, but definitely claim your profiles.
Yeah, and just to add on that, Elliot. So again, if some of you may have already started with a couple of these already, you typically recommend 3 to 5, right? And then add on as you can. There's a couple of sidebar benefits with this. Not only the fact that Elliot mentioned, you get instantly notified whether it's a positive or negative review, so that you can respond right away. But you also actually get some search engine optimization benefit. You're going to be found a lot easier and faster when you start claiming these profiles, because each of these engines are highly trafficked. So you do get some indirect SEO benefit with the more profiles you claim. A sidebar real quick, when you do that, they typically send a physical like postcard with a code. So that's going to go to probably your receptionist. It's easy to throw away. So if you do fill one of these out, just give them a heads up to look out for that, because you can't finalize the actual validation of you being a real business without that code. So just something to keep in mind. Also, they all try to upsell you something. You don't have to buy, but just be aware of that. Most of these are free. But yeah, it's what Elliot, the main thing to know is that these profiles can be generated automatically without your input, which is scary, which is why it's important to go in and claim them so that there's not misinformation out there.
Yeah, all great points, Dean. So I think you're going to talk to us a little bit about feedback and asking.
Yeah, so it's all about the ask, right? You could have, all these profiles out there, but if you don't ask for folks to give you feedback, many times they'll just sit out there. So interestingly enough, marketingland.com has this to say, right? We found that asking in person can garner you 7 to 8 times more reviews than asking via email. And the reason behind that, again, is it's more of a personal thing, right? You just wrapped up a closing and saying something very casual like, hey, we really pride ourselves on service. Can I ask you how your experience was? And the reason why you're bound to get more of a response at that point is because of this whole concept of the law of reciprocity, right? Which basically states a social norm in social psychology where people are more likely to return the favor when they feel something nice has been done for them. Well, think about what we just did here, right? We just finished a closing. You just handed the keys to that buyer, and they've just accomplished the American dream. I mean, they're on an emotional high. Or for that seller, you just confirmed that the wire hit, and now they can go on with the next chapter of their life. Maybe that's retirement or that vacation they've been thinking about, or downsizing or upsizing. So it's a great time where they feel they've received something and now they're inclined to give something back in return. So in this particular section, the action step is to really train your staff on creating a script and rolling that through. You want that ask to be as natural as possible and authentic as possible. And the easiest way to do that is just to get some practice runs in. So create a little script for yourself and then train. So diving in, I think, Elliot, this section you're talking about making it easy, because sometimes you can't always grab that review in person, and it's important to think about, doing this in a multi-channel way.
Yeah, Dean. So there's a handful of different ways that we can do this. If you go to the next slide there, and I'll kind of unpack each one. But the first one is just coming up with a easy to remember URL. And this all helps in the kind of what Dean was saying is when you ask, having an easy way or something easy to give them, easy to remember. Some simple URL like your website.com/Facebook if you want that to redirect to your Facebook page. If that's where you want to kind of recommend people put in all of their their feedback or things like that, then you can do that. Maybe you have a third-party service. Maybe you have like a survey company or something like that. Then you could always have like a /feedback on your website where that takes them to a single page where it has all your social media profiles. It has the feedback survey, whatever it might be. But you just want it easy to remember, easy to type in, no complicated URLs or anything like that. Some of these can get quite a bit out of hand. So that's number one. Number two is adding some sort of buttons or consistent placement on your website. And so again, just if you think about the scenario that Dean was kind of unpacking, if you say, hey, if you go to our website and you click on the resources tab and then you scroll down, there's a sub menu, and then you're going to click in there. It's too complicated, right? That's too complicated for anybody. So if you just go to, you say, hey, if you go to our website, down at the bottom of the page, on every page, there's a feedback button. Please leave us a review, right? That's simple to explain. It makes it very easy for them to do. Item number three is by giving them a flyer or a card, okay? Dean, there we go. I think there's a little delay on the slides there. So I got this idea from my dentist, and they did a really good job at after my first visit. They asked how the experience was, and they handed me this card or something similar. And it was just a really nice. It was a nice touch. They made it very easy for me to leave them feedback. And so what we're going to leave you with is down at the bottom. We've talked about Canva before. I don't know if anyone here is using Canva. But we actually created a template that any of you that are on this webinar can freely go to. Dean, I don't know, do you have that open? We can go through that real quick.
Yeah, let me see if I can get to this without messing things up too bad. Let me see here.
Well, if not, then that's okay.
Yeah, here we go. Let me know if you can see it come through.
Yep, it's up. So all you'd want to do is you'd click on that link. If you want to jot it down, we'll put it back up in just a minute. And you want to go to File and make a copy. And Dean, you don't actually have to, you can just show them where that is. File, make a copy.
Yep, so File, make a copy.
Yep. Right there at the bottom. And then basically you can just edit this to your heart's content, right? You can change the background colors. Dean, just change some text real quick and change a color.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go loud and say
the border.
Orange here, orange border.
There we go.
And I'll just say
review, please.
Yeah, or
yeah,
how
that's
was
fine.
it?
Perfect. So that's how easy it is. And then when you're done, all you have to do is go to the download button up there, and it'll give you different formats. So it'll give you like a PDF with the print lines around it, JPEG, PNG, so on and so forth. So you can send that to your printer and to a like a printing company, high resolution, get it printed. But we just wanted to leave you with that as a resource.
And this is free. So
yes, it is free.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to go back to the presentation there.
Sure.
So anyways, that's the URL if you want to write it down, titletap.com/card, and that's how you can have access to that card. And the fourth item here is to remind them with email. So as Dean said in one of the statistics earlier, is that asking in person will get you a higher ROI, but it's always nice to have a reminder in there, right? And the key here, I'll read this email and then I'll talk about it a little bit. So, hi customer, thanks again for trusting us with your closing. We are so excited for you. We get kudos from our bosses, and I say that a little bit tongue in cheek here. When we get mentioned in reviews for exceptional service. If you feel you had great service, please take a moment and share your experience with others on Facebook or Google, and I provided the links there. I'd really appreciate your honest feedback. Let me know if I can help with anything else, and signature. And the key with email, some people get hung up because they think that they need to make their emails, full of graphics or put a lot of thought into it. Really, the best email marketing that you can do is the personalized emails. Okay, that's where you'll get your highest ROI with email. So that leads us to our action step number 3. And just to make it easy for everybody. No one wants to fill out a 72-question survey about their experience. Make it super simple and pick at least 2 ways, 2 things that we went over here, and implement both of them. Because what works for one customer might not work for the second. They might need that second reminder just because they get busy, they're excited, whatever it might be. They're not necessarily being rude, but we've all forgotten about it. We've all forgotten about when somebody's asked us for a review. But if we get an email and we're sitting at our desk, maybe it's more convenient for us to just click on the link there and say, oh yeah, I really did want to do that. This person was awesome. So that's action step number 3. Anything to add there, Dean, before you give them a little bit of an example?
No, that's I think you summed it up nice.
Okay, so Dean's going to talk a little bit about how to put some of these together, how to string them together, but we call this buying 5 minutes.
Yeah, so really excited about this, just because we've had a lot of good feedback from people actually converting with this particular strategy. So really excited about this. We coined it, buying 5 minutes. And I just kind of want to paint the picture of what we're describing here. So imagine that you're at the closing table. You've got Mr. and Mrs. Smith there. They're buyers, first-time home buyers, and you're just wrapping the closing up. You hand them over their keys, and you basically say, so happy for you, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They're grinning ear to ear as they receive the keys. Very emotional moment. And you just pause and say, so I'm going to step out for 5 minutes to make your copy package. And in that time frame, probably in the next 30 seconds to a minute and a half, you're going to be getting an email from us, just basically asking how everything was. If you wouldn't mind just spending a minute or 2 talking about your experience, it would be greatly appreciated. So be on the lookout for that, and I'll be back in a few minutes. So you go step out. Now, before you actually started the closing, you pre-wrote an email similar to what Elliot just described, okay, to Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And you go back to your desk, you hit the send button for that email to fire off. You go make your copies, okay? And then after you're done, you walk back into the closing table, and there they are. And you say, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I've got your copy package. Did that email happen to make its way to you? Yes, it did. Great. Were you able to leave a little bit of feedback for us? Yes, we were. Awesome. And what you've just done there is you seized the moment, right? You've allowed for them to kind of, be emotional, have a few minutes to themselves, but you also gave them a deadline. And that 5 minutes is key, because I think everyone is pretty well aware the minute they leave your office, their mind is somewhere else. They've got a moving truck, they've got boxes to unpack. All that commotion starts, and that's a lot of distraction away from leaving you a review. So really the best time to do that is right there, right then and there. So you've combined the element of verbal and written, right? So that's what you want to do. So again, we coin it buying 5 minutes. You can take a quick moment to jot this down. And if anybody wants this little script, you can email us as well. We'll leave some contact information at the end. But again, to kind of summarize that, this is the kind of script that you put out as you leave the office. Their task while they're waiting is to leave you that feedback. And it's a great way to capitalize on sort of both a verbal and tangible approach to getting your review documented. So the next step here is to act it out. And so we had a little fun with this, a buyer and a closer walk into a closing room. So, take that script, take a closer, a processor. Again, the key to a lot of this is for it to be as natural and authentic as possible. So the way that that happens is through repetition and just practice. So we would encourage you
We
to
don't
really
have a
practice up. Go ahead.
sorry, I was going to say we don't have an ending to that joke yet. So bonus points if anyone come up
Yeah,
with an ending,
yeah.
we'd love to hear it.
Well, we get some feedback to see how it is for folks, but at any rate, just yeah, just take a few minutes, make sure you guys act it out, give people the confidence to roll this out, um, and we love to hear about how it works out for you. But so far, we've been getting some really great feedback from this. Uh, so now, I think we're going to slide into the dreaded bad review, Elliot. So that back in your court.
Yeah, sure. So, the first thing with bad reviews is that they may be inevitable at some point. Ultimately, if anyone, you guys have been in business for a while, you know that you cannot bat 1,000 with every single person. There's some people that are just beyond difficult. Some are just having a bad day and they need a place to vent. So if and when a bad review does happen, first thing is not to panic, right? I've seen where we've had scenarios, at least one of these, where somebody has gotten a bad review and they've wanted to literally close out of their, delete their Facebook account or delete the page and start over and those sorts of things, even though they have 72 positive reviews, right? So don't panic. And the reason for that, let me go to the next slide here, is that 52% of buyers said that they trust a product more if they have a few negative reviews. And if you think about that for a minute, it sort of makes sense. We all kind of, if you've ever looked at like a product review on Amazon or something like that, and the reviews just seem too good to be true, having some sort of negative criticism, even if it's not a deal breaker for you, it's probably a good thing because oh yeah, I see that why this person didn't rate it 5 stars, and it doesn't really apply to me, so it doesn't matter. And so what consumers are really looking for in the reviews is that how you respond to it and how you resolve it. Go to the next slide here, Dean. I think there's a delay. There we go. So they're looking for those 2 R's, really. And beyond that, when, if somebody is looking at your reviews to begin with, chances are they've already sort of made a mental buying decision to go with you. What they're really looking for is an insurance policy, right? They're looking to make sure that you respond to things when something goes wrong and that you're there, that you're a legitimate business. Here's some examples of things that they might be looking for. So do you actually respond to negative reviews? How do you respond to it? How do you conduct yourself professionally, or do you kind of yell at the person through the computer? Even though they were rude to you, you're rude back. Do you take it offline, right? Do you apologize and try to take it offline, try to make it right? Have lots of other people had a positive experience, right? No one wants to be the guinea pig. And why did somebody leave a negative review to begin with, right? Does it apply to the person that's doing the research? A lot of times, again, the coffee's cold, or you were 5 minutes late to the closing, or whatever it might be, and somebody leaves you a 1-star review for something silly like that. And so people will dismiss those if they see that, okay, they'll look at a few negative reviews and they'll dismiss the ones that don't apply to them, or the ones that seem kind of ridiculous. So beyond that, think of reviews as sort of a tipping point. And Malcolm Gladwell had a great book on this several years ago, and it's all about how the little things can make a big difference. And reviews are that thing, right? It's something very small or seemingly small, but it really does make a big difference for public perception, for any prospects that are doing their due diligence, that referral that that you get or whatever. So I'd recommend that book if you want to learn more about this concept, but just think of reviews in that light. So just to kind of unpack this before we get to the negative, like the bad reviews and how to prevent the negative reviews.
Elliot,
Yeah,
real
go
quick,
ahead.
one quick thing to kind of put a period after that last section, because we get this a lot. One best practice is absolutely to take anything negative offline, and to kind of leave the door open in the public eye, that you're not hiding under a rock when you get something like that. Put out a phone number for them to call your office, and that you're happy to discuss whatever the concern or frustration is. That is clear as day to anybody with common sense looking at that, saying, you know what, they're extending their hand out to make make things right. So whatever, and address whatever the concern was. But that is absolutely a best practice. Don't get into the tit for tat, with people online. Just simply put it out there. Hey, sorry you're frustrated. Here's our number. Please give us a call. Happy to address any of the concerns. Um, and that kind of nips things in the bud. But anyway, I just wanted to put a period after that section.
Yeah, no, thanks for adding it. Um, so before we get into kind of preventing negative reviews, um, here's kind of a recap of what we just talked about. So offense is the best defense with reviews. So claim your profiles, ask for feedback. You have to ask. It's a simple thing to do. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to force people to do it or anything else, but just say, hey, really seems like you had a great experience. Would you mind sharing that experience with other people? If not, here's the information on it, right? And that kind of leads us to number 3, making reviews easy. So give them an easy way to handle it in just a couple minutes. And the by 5 minutes kind of strings those things together, the ask and making it easy. And again, in case of bad reviews, don't panic. Just try to resolve and respond to them quickly. So getting ahead of bad reviews, Dean, I think you were going to dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. So the both sort of blessing and curse of being a third party intermediary within the transaction is that you certainly get to see the smile, and the emotion, hopefully good, at the end of the closing, and which makes a lot of that all worth it. But you also become, unfortunately, sometimes the frustration anchor, even if it's not something you did, right? It could be due to the lender or the realtor not communicating some information or whatnot, and you get to hear about it, right? So one of the things that we strongly recommend is to take a pulse, and this is something you can apply. It's very quick and easy. If you apply kind of this protocol of emailing the client, and again, some of you may already do this, but 1 to 2 weeks after you receive the order, with something very simple, hey, Mr. Smith, just checking in. Do you have any questions up to this point? Are you happy with how things are going thus far? A lot of times that'll open the door for some venting, if there is some pent up frustration there. Well, Dean, no, I haven't heard from my realtor in 2 weeks, or I'm not sure what the next step is with my lender. And that gives you the chance to really pivot the energy of the transaction, and something that could really, snowball into an unpleasant experience, and sort of, cut it down right then and there. Not only are you pivoting the energy for the customer, but you're also now a hero, um, at the end of this, because you've been able to give that insight to the realtor or lender, like, hey, you need to show your client some love. They're saying that they haven't heard from you in a couple of weeks, or they have this question. So it's just always a good idea to take a pulse, because that could start seeding what would lead into a positive review at the end of the experience. So one question just to put out there for all of you to think about is, how are you currently tracking reviews and complaints? And more importantly, if you think about that, are you doing it manually? Is it something you're doing automated? Are you doing anything at all? And it's gotten so much weight nowadays in terms of what we were talking about with just how the public validates services and goods, that it's something, this online reputation health concept is something to really start paying attention to if you haven't already. And coincidentally, we've probably heard this 1,000 times at this point, but the CFPB, with the whole complaint resolution tracking, to the extent that Alta pushed out a best practice with their Pillar 7, about tracking any kind of complaint that comes in and making sure you're on top of resolution, so that customers aren't in the cold. A lot of what we've talked about probably isn't, coffee being cold isn't quote unquote a CFPB qualified complaint. However, it doesn't matter, right? Because at the end of the day, if coffee being cold turns into this is the worst experience I ever had, is that something you guys really want, out there in the public domain? It's not. So, being able to get ahead of this and having a process to do that and manage it is really important. But there's challenges, right? And so they consist of not only having a process that you can define and scale, but taking the time to develop that process in the first place, the training that you then have to apply to your staff to make sure it's consistent, after every closing, um, and asking, the questions, take some of the training we talk about, at least in a couple of our recommendations, to practice this stuff out. Then tracking results, seeing how things are going, and then pivoting for your market, and reiterating it if need be, so that you're connecting at the right places. So for those of you that, again, if you're a DIY person, and a lot of what we've talked about thus far, you've got the bandwidth to put it into practice on your own, awesome. That's largely why we put on these webinars, is to teach and to give you some action to go out and do something about it. If on the other hand, you're looking just for an easy button, and your ROI on your time is better spent doing other things, and you would just like a process already done for you, we actually launched this solution, Consumer Tap, in January of this year. And basically, it's a two-in-one solution. It's both an automated positive review sharing tool, as well as checking the box off of satisfying the Pillar 7 best practices for consumer complaint resolution tracking. So I'm going to dive in just a couple of visuals here, just so that you can kind of get a sense of what we're talking about here. So it's a 5-star rating system. If you're rated a 4 or a 5-star, the system will automatically promote that experience as a positive review. And in this instance, the feedback was great closing. I'm telling everyone I know. That feedback gets automatically brought in to then ask that particular customer to share via Facebook or Google with just a click. So where a lot of folks are kind of running into some struggle is, many times, you're putting your public domain, your public link out there, whether it's on your website, your email signature block, and even if it was a great experience, there's a couple channels that they have to navigate through to get to that. But what if it's not a good experience, and that's the first link they get to vent? That's going right into the public domain. So basically what you're seeing here is sort of a gatekeeper, right? So if it's a positive experience, it's going to take them down door number 1. If it's a not so positive experience, it's going to take them down door number 2. So this is door number 1, which is the positive sharing component. If it's a 1 to a 3-star, and we use the example as coffee was cold, what you'll see here is that it takes them to a completely different doorway, right? Now you're into the complaint tracking mode of this. So it expresses, hey, sorry you weren't completely satisfied with your transaction. Please tell us more so we can resolve it for you. And so you get information like, if they know what the closing date was, the property address, so you can easily locate that. And then that gets submitted, and then you get notified of that right away, so you can step up and start mitigating any of those issues straight away. So, and again, in full disclosure, right, if someone is bent on leaving you a bad review and you've got public domains out there, they can do it, right? They can still do it. But to enable people to do that easier, because that's the link you put out there as their first, opportunity to leave you feedback, you as the business owner have some control of that if you've got sort of a gatekeeper type system, and that's what you market. So instead of the public domains that you would market for Facebook and Google, you'd market a separate link that can filter that out a little bit. What's nice about this too is you've got a nice executive dashboard, so you can kind of take a look at your online reputation health as a whole. The blue box there represents any stars that were a 1 to a 3-star. And if it's green, it's automatically 4 or 5-star, or it's a 1 to a 3-star that's been flipped to being resolved, right? So the system is really nice too, because you can set a day or two, whatever the day protocol is that you're like, look, if we get anything that is less than 4 or 5 stars, I want that responded to in 1 day or 2 days. And if it's not, it's going to slide in over to that red bucket, the overdue bucket, automatically. And so that'll be an escalation reminder email that, hey, we need to pay attention to this file and get it wrapped up. So it's got a nice, a little bit of a workflow there to kind of keep things going to get them resolved. Once you dive in, so let's say you're in that 3-star mode, the system is really good in that you can assign and log your progress. So you can actually assign certain issues to specific closers or processors that may have touched the file. And everything that you've put into that system, if you're adding notes, is all date time stamped. So if you're ever called to the mat about certain things, you've got a nice log that's audit ready for you. Another thing to consider is a lot of lenders are actually asking for these kind of reports now, because a lot of the business that they give is a reflection of themselves, and so they're curious as to when you do get any kind of issues or complaints, how long does it take you to really resolve those issues? So the system has a nice reporting feature as well, where you can query dates and you can export out the data and then manipulate that in Excel to your heart's content. But things like the date an issue was open, the date it was closed, the time it took to resolve, what kind of comments were left. So this is really good for goal setting and to really staying on top of your online health. So if you're targeting 10 new reviews a quarter, you can come in here with and print out the report, talk to your team about what you're getting in. It's also a great way to give high fives to the team. If a specific closer was called out for being exceptional, it's a great way to have that all documented here. Lastly, the one thing I want to touch on is this multi-office setup. So if you have a business that has multiple offices, the system will actually you can tie each individual office to their specific directory links with Facebook and Google. So if you close at office 1 versus someone else closing at office 3, it identifies the offices there so that that consumer can pick which office they closed at and leave those remarks specifically to that office, which is really helpful for you guys as the owners to identify how each office is performing, and you get those views in again that back end, that executive back end. So a lot of this is, again, it came from customers that we've had in the past, just looking for better ways to do things that were more kind of done for them and automatic without all these kind of hassles. So, spreadsheets going stale. Many times it's the receptionist getting the complaint over the phone and having to either re-articulate that over an email or having to walk that over to the manager. And a lot can get lost in translation, not to mention you then have to find the file. I mean, there's just a lot of busy work that goes behind trying to get some of this streamlined. So it mitigates all this, and this is kind of our easy button answer. So our typical pricing for this is, and the pricing that you see here is for one brand or one office up to 5 users. So if you're beyond that, it'll have to be a custom quote. But for most folks, that's a good starting point. It's typically $4.99 in one-time setup, plus $99 a month, and that's for both this 2-in-1 solution. So it's the complaint resolution tracking plus the positive review sharing. So for anyone on this webinar, we're going to give $100 off, and then we're also going to include a free month of this service. And so in order to qualify for this, really simple. All you have to do is just request a demo by July 14th. And so I'm going to leave this up here for a minute. Basically, you go into your email, type in hello@TitleTap.com, put in the subject line reviews. And if you get that to us by the 14th, you qualify for the discount. So we've also included on this particular page the links that we referred to. So TitleTap.com/card will get you actually a copy of those cards that we shared with you guys in Canva. And again, Canva is free. It's an awesome tool. Highly encourage you guys to check it out if you haven't already, but we've already done some of the heavy lifting there for you already. All you have to do is go in and just brand it for your own brand, change the colors, the name, etc., and you're done. And then TitleTap.com/mobile friendly sites. That's going to be a list of about 15 of those directory sites, and you can go there easily to go directly to those links to start claiming your profiles. And we had, I think, one question that had come through about the slides. We won't be giving out a copy of this deck. However, we will be sharing, in addition to this, for any of those that would like it, the scripts that we talked about in here. So if that's something that is of interest, just let us know. But at any rate, Elliot, is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, we will be sharing a video of this as well. So those of you who want to take more detailed notes or take screenshots of whatever you want, you can do that when we share the video.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to also say, I think Robin Cardella, she's our director of business development. She's been proctoring some of the questions. So Robin, I see one here real quick that I'll share. We've got a couple minutes for questions. So in that chat box to your right, if you've got some questions, go ahead and send them over, and Robin can share them with us. But one of the things I see right here is if I have multiple offices, does each office need to have its own directory link? It's a best practice. Elliot, I'll take this one. It's a best practice. So yeah, the experience is local, right? So it's local to that particular office. If you've got multiple offices under one brand and someone leaves some feedback, that might be difficult to know where that feedback is, the attribution for where that needs to go. Which office was that? So we highly recommend to make them office specific. And so you have within Facebook, Facebook actually has locations set up that you can set up per location. Google has the same thing where you can kind of set up each of your locations so that when you're marketing folks for the feedback, they're leaving feedback specifically for that office. And it's easy to give attribution where it was due, and also for the customer to identify that particular office as the one that got the feedback. Robin, let me see if you've got any others here that came through.
I do see a couple more questions there, Dean.
Okay. So one of the questions was, how does the email get sent out? And that email, I think I'm not sure. I'm not sure who asked the question, but
Adam did.
Okay. So Adam, I think you're referring to possibly the email just before you go into the closing. And so there's a couple ways to do that. Probably the easiest way to do it is through your typical Outlook or Exchange email. It's just something that you would create right before you step into the closing table. And then that way it's up and ready for when you wrap things up. You can just hit send. Some of the closing production suites that exist out there also have a workflow that at the end of a closing, when the status goes from pending to closed, that can also trigger an email to go out and prompt people to leave feedback. However, that might be a little tricky because a file's not closed till it's closed, and typically that doesn't happen until after everyone has left. So what I would recommend is doing it right then and there while they're still there, and don't negate the fact that your realtors and lenders are also your customers. So applying this to them as well is a good idea also. So
the other thing to add to that, Dean, is Adam, we are the feature isn't there yet, but we have a feature blueprinted to do it right from the application itself. So it's probably 2 features away. There's a couple more that are higher priority, but that has been something that our existing customers have requested. So you can kind of play that out a little bit easier by just having their closer send it right from the system itself.
Yep. Let's see, I'm just waiting. I don't know if you see any other questions. If you guys have any other questions, go ahead. We've got about another minute or so.
Brian, I wanted to know if there was a difference in price if he's already a customer. And yeah, we can talk about that, Brian. We typically do provide bundle discounts. So, but yeah, definitely request just to kind of see a demo, and then we can talk about it there.
All right, Elliot, you seen any others?
I think that's it. Robin, are there any more that I'm missing here?
Okay,
no,
well,
I think we've covered everything. Thanks.
Perfect. All right, well, hopefully everyone found this productive. If there are questions you have that we did not get to, you can email them to hello@TitleTap.com as well. But yeah, pick a few things that you learned today, put them into practice, and we'd love to hear your progress as you do. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope you guys have a great, successful week this week. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks everyone.